Good morning, Good morning, everybody. Hi, thanks for joining us today. And today is our second to last session for Festivals Helping Festivals. We're pretty excited that you've been attending and being here with us for the last 11 months, including this one. It's been pretty great. So today's topic is alcohol, marijuana, and mental health issues. And we'd love to hear your input and feedback and what you've done. As a reminder, if you want to share any information, in the reactions buttons at the bottom, just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask your questions. Anything else will be here for an hour. It is being recorded. So that's it. So I'm Debbie Mann, and my co-host is...
Hi, I'm Marnie Lapierre. I'm on the FEO board and the owner and consultant of Northern Events and Tourism Consulting, as well as the president and chair of the Timmins Multicultural Society and Festival.
Busy lady. And thanks for finding time to do this with us. So over to you, Marnie. Kind of give us a background on this very important topic.
Absolutely. So today we're meeting to have an open forum discussion on 3 items that are intertwined at events. This might just be a simple dusting off and review for some long-standing members here today, and potentially something new for the newer membership to address and participants that are here. Some events might be licensed due to the style of event being held and are most likely up to date on the regulations that the AGCO has implemented. And some events which are not licensed but should still be aware of what your responsibilities and obligations are to attendees who can sometimes arrive considerably under the influence. With the legalization of marijuana, this has changed the playing field for events, whether licensed or not. And we're kind of curious to see how your event is addressing these two particular topics. Mental health also is an area that could definitely use its own discussion forum for events. And that is something maybe we could look at a little further down the road, potentially for the 2023 series. But for today, we'd just like to suggest discussing how your organization may have planned for staff volunteer training and working with attendees who might be in distress, and what kind of support your organization may offer for these three types of participants. So we've narrowed it down to 3 separate questions, which are a little generic, but apply to all 3 for alcohol, marijuana, and mental health issues. And sharing of this type of information helps to support the event industry and opens the discussion for what we might be able to do moving forward. So the first question that we came up out of the 3 was, what kind of training have you provided or maybe even attended for your staff and volunteers for the organization when it's, you're interacting with the public, you've got alcohol maybe at your event, or somebody's arrived considerably under the influence, or if you've got somebody that is exhibiting signs of distress. And this is where we open the floor. If anybody would like to jump in, or if you have questions of your own pertaining to the particular topic matter. There you go.
So Marnie, okay, Colleen, go ahead. Hello?
Hi, Colleen. Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, barely.
Can't hear you, Colleen. Okay, so why don't we, Marnie, let me ask you, what have you done and what kind of training have you had, or have you? And in your training that you've had through, not training, but education that you've recently done through your courses, how has that subject matter been brought up and what have they said?
Well, I just finished a certification program through Centennial Event Management. And we were provided the opportunity to go through the training for Smart Serve, and we addressed the AGCO opportunities that they provide. And there's definitely a huge learning curve that I received there. Now, I've worked events for 25 years, and in our area, it wasn't addressed specifically. We left that particular matter up to our security team and the person that was holding the liquor license to deal with. Going forward, I realize that there is definite opportunity to get training to staff, volunteer, committee, and board members, because the responsibility lies on all of us to ensure the safety of our attendees and participants at the event. You know, if they're on stage or running a food truck, you know, anything can happen. You name it. It's happened at an event. I'm sure we could all write a big book. So we're not the experts in the field of providing services to people that exactly require, especially when it comes to mental health, but identifying the situations and providing some kind of plan to help that individual. You know, if somebody is extremely intoxicated and may not be able to be in control of themselves, what can we do to help them, you know, to get them home safely? Because when there is a liquor license involved, and if you ever have the opportunity to attend an AGCO training sessions, please do it. You are responsible for that person until they sober up, even if they have gone home. So if something happens to them in transit as they return to their domicile, that the onus is on the organization that held the event where the alcohol was served. So I definitely think if you have not provided any kind of training for your volunteers, staff, board, or committee members, I think now is a great time to do it before we fully launch to the events season, and connect with the AGCO, because there's all kinds of tools there that they can use to help you with that. So that has been my experience. And yes, I have seen many individuals enjoy themselves thoroughly at a licensed event. And it has caused concern. And towards the end of things, we had conversations with our health and safety team, which includes the security on site, as well as the local policing institution, so that they are aware, you know, this is happening, and, you know, discussions have been had. I'm very curious to see if anybody else has created a plan within their organization to address this. This was something extremely of interest to me, because times they are a-changing, and it's a pretty important topic out there if you've got alcohol on site for sale, or, you know, might potentially have people arriving in that condition. So I'm hoping maybe Colleen's able to get back to some auditory, because I think she had something pretty good to share.
She had a question here, and she says, we work with service clubs and groups, also Empire Theaters, so that are Smart Serve certified, taking some of the weight off our staff. So that's what her comment was.
Excellent. That's very good. Does anybody else here, if you just want to put your hand up with the either the reactions at the bottom of the screen, or, you know, if you're on camera, does your event serve alcohol? And have you had issues? So the first question, do you have alcohol at the event? Sandy Pitts, Jennifer, Middleton with, my screen is very small. I need to fix that.
Matt says Waterford Lions Club, with very few issues.
That's good. That's nice to hear.
We've had a company ask us to do taste testing. So Linda Sonnenberg says, we've had a company ask us to do taste testing. Colleen says our event staff is certified in Smart Serve as well. We have alcohol, no issues. And Marie said, we run conflict and crisis resolution training for alcohol service, and we offer mental health 101 training for all volunteer coordinators.
Very nice. Very nice. I'm just going to ask Marie, your mental health 101 training, is that a module that you developed yourself, or is that something that you were able to procure even online, or what have you? Like, how do you deliver that to the volunteers?
So we deliver it as a workshop. It's a 3 or 4 hour long workshop on a weekend, and it used to be in person, but we did it recently over Zoom. And it's run by someone who has over 20 years of experience in social work and mental health support and counseling. And it's just to sort of address the issues which all of us face when we are planning events, is that, we forget that, at the holidays, there's all kinds of mental health issues that people undergo when they're anticipating the holiday gathering. We all have these fantasies of perfection or whatever. And it's kind of similar to that when people are attending a festival, especially if they plan to go with family and friends and have a really great time. They can crash. And especially if alcohol is involved or marijuana or something like that. So it's essentially to allow everyone to be mindful of this. And then it's some sort of basic training in staying calm and active listening and trying to troubleshoot from there.
Excellent. That's really interesting to hear, because I know it's there's a lot of resources out there, so narrowing it down to something that would be applicable to your event or your organization, that's kudos to you guys to have that provision there and that support for the volunteers, because it can be a very triggering situation if a volunteer is suddenly thrust into an area where they're not experienced in dealing with people in distress, or people who have overindulged during the event, and that sometimes can do some damage. We all know the fights that can break out when there's alcohol, but there's other directions that can go in where people just have a serious emotional response, and if you're not accustomed to working with people like that, it can be very difficult and change the experience that the volunteer thought that they were going to have initially.
Absolutely.
Dave, you have your hand up. Mr. McNeil.
Hi. Yeah, I was going to say I ran Oktoberfest for 5 years, so fairly familiar with the alcohol stuff. But one thing, and I notice a lot in the comments, and I certainly would in my capacity now, and if I was going back to run a festival, I think if you do have an alcohol component to your festival, having a licensed service provider run that area for you is a really good idea, because they're up on all of the latest rules and regulations. That being said, that doesn't mitigate all of your risk. You still have to know yourself what's going on, and your board responsibilities. So, I mean, if you have an event that has a beer tent that you do serve alcohol or marijuana, I think it's in the board's best interest and all of your staff's best interest, especially if you're hands-on, to have your safety certificates. But even if you're in a board functioning capacity, I think that smartest served certificate is important, so that all along the processes. And the other thing I was going to say, that working with the AGCO, they're very good that if 2 months or month prior to your event, you want them to come out and you want them to talk to your servers and you want them to talk to your bartenders and staff and security. They run great sessions, and we would always have them out and have everybody in, and they would put hypotheticals up and work in groups and stuff. So they were really good, and they do that all across the province. So make them your friends, include them in your preparatory work, and it's always best to get it right out of their mouths. The other thing is, if you're moving around and you've done a festival, and say you've done it in the Waterloo region, and now you're up in the Sudbury area, or you're in Timmins, or you're in Thunder Bay, or you're in Windsor, is that your AGCO officers are all going to be different, and unfortunately, it's very much an interpretation of stuff. So, and I've seen it in Kitchener-Waterloo, where one inspector is very black and white, and then another inspector in another region is a little bit wishy-washy. So you'll have one person, and I know of one festival that they spent an additional $200,000 upgrading their building so that they could use more parts of it and have a higher attendance. And then another inspector came and, well, why did you do that? You didn't need to do that. Well, they've just spent $200,000. So it's important to keep that relationship going and moving forward, and make sure you include your security and your police department, because the way they interact together, it's important as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we've worked with our parking lot team as well, because, people do fly under the radar sometimes. And our parking lot attendants have taken the initiative that when they notice somebody's getting into their vehicle and they are, quite under the influence, they have communication with our security team who can notify the local constabulary, so that as this person is exiting the parking lot, because we do not put our volunteers at risk by having them try to physically stop somebody, but they'll give the description of the vehicle and the license plate number, so that those people are, every time it's happened, which has been twice in my 25 years, they've barely gotten their nose out of the parking lot, and the cherries are flashing. They're right there. They've got them. So we're at least here in Timmins, we've been very fortunate that way. But it's also, a good idea to have that discussion that your parking lot attendants, if they're volunteers especially, that, give them the permission that if you see somebody's getting into their vehicle, it is not up to them to go and stop that person. They don't have that kind of training, and you don't know what kind of individual you'll be dealing with, but they notify the security team immediately, who communicate with the police. Then they are, dealt with accordingly. And hopefully that, mitigates any further risk. And and
attaching onto that, Marnie, is that parking lot attendant and that security guard quite often are your first point of contact with your attendee and your last point of contact. So, you're making a first impression coming into your event by how you've been treated through security, through lines and stuff like that. So while a security has a job to do, you should be working with them, because they are part of your team, and they don't have to be heavy-handed all the time. There's a point where that has to be turned on, but again, you only get one chance to make that first impression. If you're coming into a facility and you've been hassled by security and your parking lot people have been impolite, you're already starting your night off on a bad foot. Same with when you're leaving. So I think sometimes in the customer service profile, we forget about those people, but, in a lot of respects, they're our first and last impression, and probably some of our most important connections to make as well going through the process.
Exactly. Very good point. Debbie, you've asked, what about insurance on matters like this? This is where you have to have that conversation with your organization's insurance company. If the events that I've been involved with, the main food and beverage tent holds the license, and that goes out to RFP to an organization or a food and beverage company, and they hold the alcohol license. But again, you notify your insurance, you ensure that they're fully insured, that they've got their Smart Serve staff. Make sure you've got all those tick boxes checked off, so that you've shown due diligence going forward. If there ever, heavens forbid, be an issue, that you need to show your responsible actions to avoid, mitigate, or prohibit any of that happening. If it's lackadaisical and it's just like, oh yeah, Rotary Club has it, you hope that all points are taken with them, but if you're not, I always call it, I nag them. Can I see that you've got your insurance? Can I see that the staff or volunteers you've got on board have their Smart Serve, and have the discussions. How are you going to mitigate these risks? If you notice an attendee has come up for their 7th beer and they can barely pronunciate the type of beer that they want, how are you dealing with that? We've also in the past, the main food and beverage tent where the alcohol is served is fenced in, and they provide their own security within it, because that alone is
Speaking.
Sorry?
Good.
Oh,
Good to hear from you.
Catherine, can you mute yourself? Thanks.
So we make sure that they have their security team, which is completely focused on the attendees within the fenced-in licensed area. But their security team also communicates with ours, because they may notice somebody's leaving. They can communicate with the security team as the person makes their way to the parking lot. If it's somebody that's leaving the area, we've even had our security team say, "Hey, do you need me to call you a cab?" to get them home. And then we have that relationship with the cab drivers, that the person being delivered to such and such an address has made it there. So we know where they're going if we need to, if something comes forward later. So that I've done myself so that I know that person has made it home safely. Timmins is small, and we know about 2/3 of the cab drivers here. So they will send a text, made it to 21 Main Street. They entered the domicile. We've been very fortunate that way, but that doesn't always happen. Linda, you have your hand out.
Did. Question for you, because I run the Wiener Fest Festival. Wieners and, beer, wiener dogs and beer usually don't mix. We've never done it. This year we have actually a company. They actually make dog beer. So they're coming this year. And because of that, we've had a brewing company ask if they can come and just do taste testing. And there's a vodka company that really supports dog rescue, and they want to come and do taste testing. I said, the hassle with it. They said, oh, well, we'll take all responsibility. I said, okay, you set up the fencing, you set up the area, you get the license, you do everything. Oh yeah, we'll do everything. And now I'm wondering, I'm not so sure if that's such a good idea, because it still puts a lot on me just for taste testing their little tiny samples. So you give good information about that. So I'm still hesitant whether we should do that or not. We're going to have the dog beer anyways, but the human stuff I'm not so sure about.
I would suggest in that scenario too that it's important that you have a conversation with your insurance supplier, because even though a third party is supplying it on site, your event has now gone from a non-alcohol event to an alcohol serving event, which could dramatically affect your insurance. So, while you're making all of those decisions, and I see some other people in there, asking about policies and procedures, and I think documenting your due diligence all through the path. We had this meeting, we met with these people, we had our security people go through this training, we've got everybody's smart serve on file, in a file, on location, that and make sure your insurance company is with you all through that process, because you don't want to get into a position where you need their coverage and you find out it's null and void because now you're serving alcohol and it was never on your event before.
That's a good point. And where we are actually in Woodstock behind the casino. So I know the LG actually showed up last year to see if we were doing a raffle. And I said, oh, I know we need a license and we don't have a raffle, but I'm smart served and I won't do it anymore. The risk and liability, like Marie was saying, you're responsible till that person sobers up, and you're responsible if that person comes and you serve something and you've overserved them and they leave and get in an accident, you're responsible. So yeah, I'm smart served and won't do it anymore because of the risk. But thank you for the information.
It is definitely a large risk. And I see Megan has, from the city of Cambridge, in your emergency plan, how do you describe the mitigation efforts for involving alcohol? If you maintain a relationship with AGCO or venture onto their site, everything that they've got listed there, those are your steps. And you can have those conversations with your area representative from AGCO, and they can help you develop that so that you have that in your policies and procedures plan. Even when you're doing event funding applications, there's normally a risk section that they ask you, how are you addressing risks? You can, you'll have that to add in there. And by having these steps that you can follow, this would be part of your emergency planning, your risk management plan, so that you've got something to provide to your organization, your staff, your volunteers, your board, whoever is going to be on the ground running with this. And that's part of the discussion you bring into whoever is holding the liquor license, because it's easy to forget. It's been a few years since we've had full on in-person events, and things have changed, and you want to make sure that the person that is going to affect the reputation of your event, I shouldn't say person, but the entity, the one serving the alcohol, you want to make sure that they're up to date on all the standards, and that is part of the risk management plan, and you put that in there. And that's something that should be reviewed at minimum 3 months before your event if there's changes happening, and to stay on board of those changes if that is part of the plan, is to sell or have the availability of alcohol at your event, whether you sell it or not, depending on the type of event you have. So in a nutshell,
Christine,
I can go on.
Christine has a comment here. We have never had an issue in 24 years. We also use a service club in our bars and our own volunteers selling our drink tickets, our Smart Serve. We provide an orientation session, and our team leaders provide training as well. We also hire security and off-duty police to boost our efforts. We are concerned about how many will recert this year. Many have indicated they will not recert. We pay for recertification. Any others worried about this?
So if you're using a service club in the bars and your own volunteers, I'm going to assume that the service club is getting some sort of the profits back for that. It's plain and simple. They're not going to be able to do the event if they don't prove their certification. It's something that should be mandatory. And if you don't have people that are certified serving the alcohol through Smart Serve, an AGCO happens to wander on the site and say, "Hey, you're serving alcohol. Can I see your card?" They don't have it. Your alcohol is shut down for the remainder of the event. No ifs, ands, or buts. No second chances. If they have certification, but they don't have the card on them, I think they can actually get it virtually as well. I might be wrong on that. I can confirm later, but they have to have their certification. And you want to preserve the reputation of the event by ensuring that anyone touching the alcohol, handing it over, has their certification. No, just mandatory. And if one organization can't supply it and they need help finding it, there's always a call out to the community. But you may have to weigh your options of who might take that on for you going forward. But yeah, it's a tick box that has to happen, definitely.
Right. Marie said, and wasn't there a festival in Windsor that was sued when one of the volunteers who was operating a taste testing booth came under the influence and had a fatal accident on the way home from the festival? There was. I don't remember it being as a taste testing, other than somebody serving a volunteer whose birthday was the next day, who was and then she left, and yes, there was a fatal accident and a suing. So that festival doesn't happen anymore because of that. The board was sued. It was quite messy. So yeah, I don't know if anybody has any other comments on that, but
just going to go back up the questions.
No. And Matt said, I think the issue is the old paper Smart Serve certs with no expiry all expire this year. It means that many will have to recertify on the new certification. And Linda said, does that answer questions? And Linda says, recent changes to the liquor framework in Ontario will impact all the existing Smart Serve certificate holders. As of July 1st, 2022, after June 30th, 2023, all Smart Serve certificates issued before July 1, 2018 will be expired. And I wonder if that's because of the new marijuana training and licensing and that?
Yeah, but I think part of it is, also in reviewing their stuff with SmartServe and with the AGCO. I think they realize that, things do change through a process, and if somebody, gets a certificate once and doesn't go back and recertify or get caught up on changes and regulations and stuff like that, that's a long window of time. So I think it's part of having an evolution of the service as well.
I think for years, though, I think the service clubs in particular were very used to being able to have, they had these SmartServe people that didn't have an expiry date. And I think that's where the service clubs are now saying, oh, shoot, everything's expiring this year, and having to struggle to get recertified. And that's why some of the people are having problems and maybe have to really pay attention this year in particular to SmartServe certification, because the old paper certs are all expiring at the end of June this year because they don't have an expiry date on them. And that expires as of the end of June. So it's something to be careful of, especially this year.
So there's no expiry date on the paper?
In the past, there wasn't. That was introduced a couple years ago.
Okay.
So all the old certs, if you got certified anytime more than about 5 years ago now, there was no expiry on it. So you'd never had to get recertified. And then they've introduced it. So as of this year, as of June 30th, all those certs with no dates are expired. So you have to get recertified every 5 years. So the service clubs with the older folks that used to be able to do a class and have 20 people in a room and write a test, all that's gone away. They have to actually do a camera test on the computer and fill out and do a live test, and that like a moderated test. Yeah. So it's a shift in the whole AGCO process, which is going to affect all of us because it's going to get harder to find SmartServe people.
Dave, did you have any comments on that?
No, and I think we've had the SmartServe team on, I don't know whether under this format, but one of our Tuesday talks for sure. So it will be in our library on our YouTube channels where Richard sort of walks everybody through the processes and what needs to be done and how to get current and everything else there.
Right. That was done, a couple of months ago. So go ahead, Marnie.
I was just going to say, I would like to recommend to anybody that is part of the organizing committee of the event to go and do the SmartServe training, whether you participate as a SmartServer or not. The amount of information there that protects your event is monstrous. There's lots that you can be aware of, because if you're not using the same service provider who sells the alcohol at your event year after year, if it goes to different RFPs, it's good to have an eyes on and an awareness of what's happening behind the bar, as well as in the licensed area. To have that awareness, can help you troubleshoot things, because it gets really busy fast. We've all seen the lineups, to go get the beer tickets and that. And if you see issues that maybe the rest of their staff isn't seeing, you can bring it forward to their lead saying, this is falling through the cracks. Let's step up the protocols, and just, please remind your staff, because even though they have the insurance and the event has the insurance, there's still that 1% that you are liable for. And again, it's another due diligence item that you can address going through, just having that awareness. Same with, when you've got food trucks at an event, you want to ensure that they're following all the protocols. It's the same thing with the alcohol. At least one member on your committee, board, or what have you, the organization, should be aware of this so that they can have that conversation if needed with the supplier at the event.
And Marnie, the other thing I would add on to that it's important with your security teams and your bar staff and stuff like that to have good incident reporting and to track it and keep hold of it, because I forget what the time frame now is, but up to a year, you can be charged up to a year after your event. So it's not like it's your event's over and you didn't have any charges, you're out of the woods. You could be charged 3, 4, 5, 6 months later. So, it's important that you have it documented if there were incidents on all of the processes, what happened all along that way. Like you said, with your taxi companies and Timmins, it's important to follow that step and to have that debrief. If it's a several day festival, have it every night afterwards. Start every day with a meeting with the security team, talking about what we went through with yesterday, what to watch out for today, trends that you're noticing. And yeah, it's a worrying cycle when you have your name on an SOP or a liquor license, because ultimately, you're going to be the one responsible, your club, your organization, your board, and everybody. So it's in everybody's best interest to be knowledgeable about what can happen along the process.
Definitely. And it's wide open. It's an eyes opening experience when you go through that training module that the AGCO provides. Things I had never considered before. And I came away with a lot from that to implement going forward with any events that are serving alcohol, because it little things that I never considered. And I fully recommend, I know we have the links for it that we can provide in the follow-up for this particular presentation. I fully recommend sharing that with your organization and, seeing who's in. Oh, there we go. Debbie's just put the links in for us. So we have the links to AGCO and the Canadian Mental Health Association. They have wonderful tools there that if you haven't had the opportunity to go and check them out, please make some time before your event. And, they have contacts there that if you have questions going forward, talk to those experts in the field. Definitely.
Tanya has a question from Downtown Simcoe. Last year, we asked the AGCO, and they said it falls to the event organizer and the municipal rules if bartenders have Smart Serve. The AGCO doesn't have a mandatory clause for Smart Serve, or that was last year. It definitely is better for insurance, but not a deal breaker. In our municipality, it only says people need Smart Serve if they are serving on municipal property indoors, I believe. It may be for and it may be for outdoors event. Any comment on that, Marnie or Dave?
Well, yeah, Deb, and in the guidelines through the AGCO and through Smart Serve, it doesn't say that your board or your board president need to have Smart Serve to have it at your event. Anybody touching it or serving it, yes, they do. But by association, you're responsible. So I think it's in your best interest. While all the years at Oktoberfest, I didn't need to be Smart Serve trained, but I was, because I wanted to know what everybody was responsible for all along the way. What was the process? How do we keep this insured? And what we even did was see some of the clubs that were involved in the process. We'd want, as part of our coverage, can you send us your certificates that we'll keep in our personnel file for all of your Smart Serve people, so that we know that if there's a problem at Hall B, okay, here, we've got the certificate. We know that they've been trained, they've been through the processes. So we would follow that all down through the ranks and check in and check up on everybody. So.
Okay. Linda's got her hand up. Or Marnie, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, Linda's got her hand up.
I have to try and unmute myself because I have wiener dogs that just don't bark hopefully at the right time. Tanya said about branding. I know a little bit. She said with cannabis, I have a cannabis company that's approached us about sponsoring. So cannabis companies can't sponsor you?
Not yet.
Good to know, because apparently they don't know the rules then, because they've offered to be a sponsor and want their branding at the front gate.
Yeah, you have to be really careful. It's a gray area. And again, you might get away with it, you might not. So I mean, if I was thinking about that, if I was running a festival with the marijuana, I would definitely have legal involved. I would definitely have a conversation with the AGCO, just so that you know opinions and make your choices in through there. And I know with the AGCO and marijuana, and I sat on their task force when they were bringing edibles in. And one of the things that I was promoting, a lot of bar owners and the OPP was, we've got to get these regulations more black and white. We have to eliminate the gray, because gray is where everybody's going to get in trouble. If you can do this and you can't do that, that's where everybody wants to be. They want clear, decisive answers. But right now in that marijuana playing field and sponsorships, technically it's not allowed. But I know there are festivals that have included it somehow, and closed up tents with no signage or anything.
Yeah, we were planning to do that. Believe it or not, there is a company that sells edible dog treats. And that's why they're coming, because they have edible dog supplements for dogs.
Yeah, and I know that there was a company, Linda, when I went to the Pet Expo in Toronto last year or this year, they were also handing out edibles for people. So just make sure, you know, if you're going to do it,
That they're not doing human consumption.
yeah, yeah.
Man, an organizer's job is never done, is it? Really?
Nope,
I have
never.
enough to do.
I have seen a festival that rented out space for a consumable operation just to raise awareness. No products for sale, and
Samplings?
not even samplings, just raising awareness of the different types, what it can help with, what warning signs are for misuse, and what have you. Definitely nothing was being sold at the time, because I think that was 2017 or 2018. And definitely our local health unit had a majority of concerns about that. And it was a very different setup, but nothing was sold that could be consumed, and people feeling effects from it. It wasn't allowed, no sponsorship, but that is how they did the workaround so that the company could support the event. So instead of just throwing money at it, they created an educational piece that was available to the public, and you could not enter into that area unless you were age of majority, and you had to provide documentation at that time. But you know, things change, and you know, if we have to make arrangements to allow people to partake, I really hope that at some point we'll be able to get those sponsored dollars, because they've got them waiting to hand over. So
Tanya has Megan, and I think we may have answered this. Does anyone have any key learnings about navigating presence of cannabis at events? I think Dave answered some of that. And you, Marnie, anything to add to it?
We had a designated smoking area for those that partook, and it was a considerable walk away from the area, because it was a family event. Again, it had a licensed area, but if you were going to do that, your smoking area was considerably further, so that it wasn't around minors. They couldn't be exposed to it. It wasn't really well used, which I think it was still a comfort level for people that do that, to do it in public. And I haven't seen anything provisions made since that particular event here in the community, because again, such a gray area, and nobody's really solid on what the regulations are at an event for that. So,
and I think the most important thing, and this is what Rich and his team at Smart Serve always say, is impaired is impaired. Whether you had a gummy, whether you smoked a joint, whether you had a Ryan Coke or a beer or whatever, impaired is impaired. And the thing is, if you hold a liquor license for your event and someone has had 3 or 4 gummies and is totally impaired, and you've made absolutely no revenue off of that person, but you've allowed them to smoke or eat on site, now it's directly affected your liquor license and thrown into jeopardy everything you put in place for protections and everything there. So, I mean, it's a tough position that everybody's in right now, but I think really realizing the implications of what one does to the other is important.
yeah.
And Tanya also said cannabis has to be 9 meters off municipal property, not sure of insurance.
Yeah, that's something you'd have, like each insurance company would have to give you that information as to what they're allowing. You know, that is definitely a topic we can probably dive into in later in the year when we have a little bit more time. Like I say, these are really big topics to be discussing all at once, but we're getting that conversation going and that thinking before, you know, the season really fully kicks off. I think it's probably a bigger concern in the summer months than the winter. So, it's definitely a good time to start having those conversations with your insurance company, with AGCO, with the suppliers and potential sponsors that are coming in from that area of the industry. And Linda, you've mentioned, yes, they are in London, Ontario. To which part are you responding to?
Catherine was asking if anyone's heard about the mobile cannabis shops that accommodate. Yeah, they're in London already. And it looks like a food truck, except it sells cannabis out of it. Now,
wow.
Yeah, literally.
Wow. So is it edibles that they're, I guess, edibles, smoking, whatever?
Whatever you partake in, I guess, of it is what they sell to the public. Yeah. And they look like a food truck, except, they got the green leaf on it and stuff. And yeah, they pull into the parking lots in London. There's one that goes around to different parts of London, and they sell it out of there.
And have they shown up at events, Linda?
I've seen them at one event that was earlier, but it was a downtown London festival. They made downtown London a weird kind of street, and they cordoned it off and have different events. And I've seen him down there.
Interesting.
And would they be part? So this is just a question for me because Linda said I have food trucks. Ask if Board of Health will show up, and I say I can say the guarantee that they will show. Would they show up for a cannabis truck?
That's a good question. But yeah, I know
that would be your AGCO person.
But if they're selling edibles,
yeah, it's still AGCO.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's funny how many people who sell food, like, I'll have someone who sells strudel, and they say, "Oh, we don't need a Board of Health." I said, "If anything goes in someone's mouth, I said, you can guarantee you need to have Board of Health approval." And they said, "Oh, we'll just sneak it in." I said, "No, you won't, because they will show." And because in Oxford County, you can guarantee it's like the Men in Black show up, and, like, literally, they flash their badges, and I'm like, "Yep, how you doing?" If you don't have something in order, then yeah, they are very diligent, and they will shut your whole festival down, literally. So you got to be very careful with Board of Health.
Yeah. I remember when I first started here, there was some real horrific stories that happened. And it's gotten a lot stricter since I've been on board. So Tanya says any brand, and branding is another issue with cannabis that would have been navigated. There are strict marketing rules. Okay. So Dave's mentioned that about non-logoed tents. Okay, Christine, that is my point about recertifying. Many do not want to spend the time recertifying. This is going to be an issue, even if the service clubs are having issues. Our board of directors, our board members are also smart serve, and you are right. It's an eye opener. Matt says Norfolk requires on municipal property with defined rules for both indoor and outdoor. Does anyone run free training? And if they do they have a contract that commits the volunteer to show up to work at the event? I don't know exactly. It's really gray. They have a lot of money, so there has to be ways to support the event. They have interests but are scared of rules. Maybe there should be another workshop with FEO if it becomes a little more clear. You really need security and ID proof. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind on this. So samplings are totally a no-go with marijuana companies. Can they be a vendor at a festival under their own license? Are they responsible for the patrons at that point, or are the organizers? We allow marijuana smoking in our regulated smoking areas at our brewery event. No issues. Comments on that? Marnie, Dave?
No, that's kind of what we've been covering as we go through. So I think
okay, mobile cannabis we've talked about. They're in London. Maybe if they're making space cake or something cooked. I've never heard of space cake. So, yeah, okay.
I mean, if everybody sees a value in it, we can set up a Tuesday talks with Richard. I can get someone from a cannabis company and maybe a lawyer that can just sort of go through and vet anything. We've done it a few times. We've done it in some of our virtual conferences, and they should all still be online. So if you do a little bit of searching, and we could maybe get, well, Jay's not on the call today, but we could maybe with the note Deb sends out as a thank you, we can provide some links to where those things are as well. But I can certainly, as we get it closer to the summer, try to arrange that panel and put something out for everybody.
That would be great, Dave. Thanks. That's a good idea. Everybody wants that to happen. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Any other, that went fast. Any other words of wisdom? Any other input? Linda?
I know I have lots of questions kind of thing. We had it one time where someone was drinking. Someone came up to me as an organizer and said, "Did you know someone's drinking?" So I said, "Well, I'll take care of it." Went over and just said, "Hey, I know you're enjoying the festival, but do you realize if you have alcohol here and the police show up, I could be shut down and we'll never have this festival again?" They were so awesome. They said, "Oh, we'll put it away. We're fine. We're sorry," kind of thing. These days, people are not so accommodating. What if you have someone at your festival, it's non-alcoholic, and they show up and they've been drinking? What's your responsibilities then?
In the past, I have approached the individual. I usually have a security escort with me just in case. I am a little person, by the way. I am 5'2" and not intimidating whatsoever. So if I'll have my security detail, a few feet away. And, if the discussion doesn't go well, there is a signal for the security person to come forward. And then they are asked a second time. And if they are still belligerent, then they are escorted off. Plain and simple, because in the end, it is safety and reputation of the event. If it's a family event and you've got somebody who is stumbling around, it could be intimidating to the children. They may not have the best intention while they're there. They definitely lacked the common sense. So, you first and foremost, you need to protect that person who's under the influence. You need to protect the people that are at the event, and you want to ensure that they get home safely, and they understand what the ramifications of participating in such a manner are.
We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate. We've never had security. I have security overnight protecting stuff, but they leave at 6 a.m. But I do invite the Woodstock and OPP auxiliary, and one of the vendors, it's his brother. So we have quite a few police officers that do come around. They just walk around. So do you think you need security on top of that? Or are we getting to a point where you need security now?
I think it all depends on the event and what your comfort level is.
It's wiener dogs.
Well, part of it is all defined by the AGCO too. If you have a liquor license, they're going to want to know your footprint. They want to know your egress and exits and entrances. They'll go on and know how many doors you have, and they'll pretty well dictate what kind of security you need. Same with your fire, and if you're in a tent, they're going to tell you the kind of security you need in there as well. And usually it's one at each door. 1 or 2 at each door, and it's usually 1 or 2 that will accompany cash from the different bars to their holding areas and stuff like that. So, in some respects, it's laid out by your liquor license, and that's something that between your AGCO people, your local police force, they can pretty well dictate what numbers are. And I think a lot of people will be surprised because you would think in smaller cities and stuff like that, you would need less security and less policing, but in most instances, you need more than the city of Toronto. Like I know a few events that happened in Kitchener where they required 60 off-duty police officers, where the same function in Toronto required 15. And I had a long conversation with the chief of police in Kitchener at the time, who said to me that, well, in Toronto at any given time from the locale where the event was, there's 350 police officers who could be there within 5 minutes. Whereas in Waterloo region, there might not be 60 cops on duty that day. So to get them to an incident. So, they'll help you walk you through it. and they'll tell you what's required. So.
Definitely. And in smaller communities, the opportunity for incidents to happen are a little bit greater because people know each other and home issues come forward. And that's where, the confrontations in the bar area will happen. And that's when the culprits are usually known to each other and within the community.
And somebody wrote in here to promote a ride program. I remember Oktoberfest had, just because I'm here in Kitchener too, they had the Red Nose ride program where there would be, Dave, you can probably talk to this.
Yeah, it was Ride a Bus on Us. And it was an initiative that we did with the local transit and with Molson's. Well, it was free to the customers, but that was a $60,000 campaign, with Molson's and the GRT. But what we would do is we would offer free transit to and from the fest halls on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays.
Wasn't there one too, though, where the Red Nose would come? There would be two people, and one would drive the person to their home.
Well, that's I forget what they call it now, but yeah, it's one of the drinking and driving companies now where
ride programs.
You can drive your vehicle to the event, and then if you're impaired, they'll come and pick you up with another driver, take your vehicle home.
Right.
In Timmins, we've partnered with a local school bus organization because the events take place on the weekend. And in sponsorship, they provided 2 buses that will take you to 4 different areas of the city so that, you could walk a couple of blocks, jump on the bus, get to the event, and then come home without having to worry about bringing your vehicle and navigating, getting back there if you've decided to park overnight. So it's, those types of opportunities are out there. Depending on what your community is like, having those conversations is a great idea.
Right. And Paul said promote a ride program and put into place a dedicated area for Uber taxi companies, et cetera, at the exit.
Definitely.
And those taxi companies could award those to use their services with a free gift prepared by a sponsor. Anyway, yes.
Want me to expand on that a little bit?
Well, we're at the end of our time, Paul. I'd love to, but our hour is up.
That's okay. Thank you.
But people can reach out to you to hear more.
Sure.
Why don't you pop your email in there and people can reach out to you for more information on that.
Yeah, it worked for us when we did the Beatles Festival. It was fantastic. And I'll just put that in there.
Perfect.
I'm just going to jump in on the back of what Paul said. We also had at Oktoberfest, anytime anyone went through a rides program and was clean, they got a book of coupons that were redeemable through sponsors of the festival.
Very good.
Oh, nice.
Exactly. Yep. It's pretty close.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. This was great. This is our 11th Festivals Helping Festivals. And now we're not going to be doing anything in March because we have our conference. I hope you will be coming to conference. It's a great lineup of speakers. And if you haven't gotten your membership, to get the membership rates at the conference, give me a call. And we'll be back in April on the importance of networking your event. And that's it. Marnie, do you have anything else?
No, I'm just hoping to see everybody at the conference. Let's continue discussions there over coffee if you want. Definitely come up and say hello to all of us from FEO, and don't be shy. Let's get together and connect at the conference this year. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Been way too long. Thanks, everyone. Have a great month. We'll see you, and we're here to answer any questions for you. Thanks,
Anytime.
everyone. Bye.